Next up, questions for the mayoral candidate.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm short.
Will you appoint a town charter commission, and if, what topics do you think need to be addressed in the charter?
Absolutely, I would, absolutely in favor of a charter revision commission. Again, like everybody else pretty much on the panel has said, it's long overdue. So some of the things that I would really like to look at, again, are bifurcation, perhaps putting in the option for bifurcation in the budget. And again, going back to perhaps not putting the budget in the town council's hands and having, I guess, endless referendums. If it came down to 2 or 3 budget referendums and there could be no compromise, at least you could then perhaps bifurcate and then figure out which side would pass and which side wouldn't, and work it from there. That's an option, but again, something for a charter revision commission to look at, certainly wouldn't be my decision. I would also look at, again, regarding the budget process, the process that we go through when a budget referendum fails twice. There are clear things stated in the charter. I think perhaps it needs to be revisited, it needs to be looked at, perhaps made a little bit more clearer as to what's expected from the charter, what's from the council, and what's expected from the Board of Finance. I'd also perhaps like to see terms for contracts for department heads. This came up recently, where the terms for department heads technically end with the mayor's term. So for every mayor, there can be a change of all the department heads. That also needs to be looked at, whether we think that's still a good idea or whether we want to, alter that in some fashion. I'd also like to take a look at who the town attorney works for. Should the town attorney be an at-will employee of the mayor? Or should he be perhaps an appointed position by the town council?
1 minute.
This would allow perhaps a little bit more freedom for the town attorney to rule in a way that's more beneficial to the council or the people. And again, I would do the same perhaps for the Board of Finance, or not the Director of Finance, pardon me. And then I would also like to see maybe even some enforcement power. Again, a recall provision of some sort. And if I have a couple of minutes, I don't necessarily, as far as a
30 seconds.
as far as a 4-year term, I'm not necessarily in favor of it or against it. I would like to see the council stay at 2 years. So if there needed to be a check on a 4-year mayor, a change in council could provide that check. And I think that's it.
Since public comment does not necessitate an answer from a mayor during a meeting, do you think a question and answer item should be added to the agenda?
I would be in favor of a question and answer period for the mayor or the town council. My only problem again was that it not become a debate, which takes up hours and hours and hours of time. But perhaps something that's at the very end of an agenda. So if someone in the audience is waiting for a particular agenda item, they don't have to suffer through some kind of prolonged agenda item, so that they could get to their business and perhaps leave, and then this could occur at the end. So yeah, I would be absolutely in favor of some form of a question and answer period.
What is your plan to bring more businesses to Plymouth?
Well, we've got a pretty good system in place We can do economic development grants, we can do tax abatements to incentivize small businesses. But one of the biggest things I think we can do is to be more business friendly. And if that means streamlining the process to a new business coming to town, perhaps building a new building, or perhaps they need more attention could be paid to them so that we can work them through that process, which can be a little laborious. We can get them through that process faster, at less cost to them. Sometimes, especially if building a new building is involved, we go through endless revisions of plans, which cost potential business thousands and thousands of dollars re-engineering their plans. If we can streamline that process and just become more business friendly overall, along with all of our economic development incentives that we have in place, I think that's probably about as good as we can do, So I think that's about what we can do.
What if any cost-saving measures will you put in place over the next 2 years?
This is a tough one. When the town council was handed the budget this past June, Councilman Zagorski and myself went through the budget line by line, and we picked it apart and we looked, and there's not a lot of money to be saved less, again, without cutting positions and without, so that's a difficult one. I mean, I think sometimes the town is engaged in lawsuits that we shouldn't be engaged in, costing the town tens of thousands of dollars. In some departments, there's abuse of overtime. Some departments, there shouldn't be overtime at all. There's barely enough work to be done in an 8-hour day, so I can't understand how these departments end up with overtime. So that needs to be looked at. I think one of the other things we can do is we can try to manage money better. We need to send some of these, every time the charter requires projects to go out to bid, those projects need to go out to bid. We give the taxpayer the best bang for their buck when we get several quotes, especially, over 10,000, we're supposed to get quotes. We're supposed to get quotes and find, not necessarily the cheapest, because sometimes the cheapest cuts corners, but at the same time, we get these quotes and we can give the taxpayer the best bang for their buck. I think we need a purchasing policy so we can follow the money, we can trace every single penny of it. Where does it go? Where is the waste? Where is maybe perhaps a little abuse or some fraud? We can find that if we have a purchasing policy in place where every single penny can be traced. We've got a lot of fiscal issues in town, and we've got to fix those fiscal issues first. And then we can kind of reassess where we think our problem areas are, and hopefully there's some reductions, but I don't necessarily promise anything.
Last question.
Last question.
What do you propose to raise property value in our town?
That's another good one. Raising property values in our town comes from a lot of different things. It comes from a school system. It comes from a school system that's educating our children. And while I don't personally put a whole lot of value in standardized test scores, our standardized test scores are fairly low, especially when you get above 4th grade. So we need to take a look at our education system and figure out how we get those test scores up. Infrastructure, our roads. Our roads in some areas are absolutely deplorable, and we can't continue not maintaining our roads. It drags everybody's property values down. Route 6 needs to be, we've got to do something with Route 6. And I'll tell you what, we got a lot of great minds up here. It's just listening to all of these guys, we can come up with a solution for Route 6 if we work together as a community. because something's got to be done. It can be, commercial blight ordinances. It could be tax abatements if a commercial property owner fills a storefront, so that we start filling some of these empty storefronts. But not one person has the answers. We all have to work together to solve the Main Street problem. Really, there's, other than maintaining our infrastructure and the school system, what else can a community do to raise property values? There's really not a whole lot. I mean, blight is important. There's nothing that will affect your property value more than a blighted neighbor. And it's unfortunate, and blight is not something that I like to even talk about or think about, because it's hard. Because what do?
1 minute.
Do you take someone's property? Do you add insult to injury? There's a fine line from there. But I think that pretty much outlines what can be done. I mean, other than perhaps trying to work on our mill rate and trying to maybe not reduce it, but to keep it in check and keep it moderate, so that people and businesses want to move here.